Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking case. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. Right now, the former billionaire mogul who once dominated the music, fashion, and lifestyle arenas is in the fight of his life. After being denied bail for a third time, he has less than 5 months to prepare for a trial that could bring him his freedom or keep him locked down in federal prison for 30 years or more. The stakes could not be higher. With so much on the line, there's intense pressure on both sides to win. But at what cost? The question we're asking in this episode of Street Soldiers is, can Diddy get a fair trial? Diddy's 6 oldest children presented a dignified show of family unity at several court hearings, walking into the 500 Pearl Street federal courthouse, holding hands and remaining silent despite some taunts. In an Instagram post on the disgraced mogul's birthday in November, his kids made a family birthday video for him, starring his youngest, toddler baby Love.
Happy birthday to Daddy.
At Diddy's third bail request hearing, which was denied, prosecutors accused him of using his children in the social media as publicity pawns designed to taint a jury pool. His lawyer countered that Diddy, who has pleaded not guilty to the charges, was just trying to level the playing field with all the negative press. But the involvement of the kids has been met with mixed and unfavorable reaction, says New York Post lifestyle reporter Asia Grace.
The social media activity shown by his children and the posts that they've been sharing, it's not garnering the support and the sympathy that I think he and his team would have wanted from the fans. I think that he was expecting this big outcry of, this is a miscarriage of injustice. This is Diddy we're talking about. Folks are no longer standing for him. They're actually wanting to see him potentially pay for some of the alleged crimes that he's committed.
No matter how intense the publicity gets, Diddy will be able to get a fair trial despite the challenges, says criminal defense attorney Philip Hamilton. Hamilton says prosecutors, investigators, and judges in the Southern District of New York, where the trial will take place, are some of the best in their professions and will follow the law.
Now, is that fair trial going to be an uphill battle for him in terms of trying to come out where he wants to come, which is with an acquittal? 100%. Just because he can get a fair trial doesn't mean that he's going to have an easy case. These allegations are well investigated. They're stacked against him. There are cooperators that are working with the government.
As the clock ticks down to his May 2025 trial, Diddy, who once lived in mansions staffed with servants and stayed in 5-star hotels, is on lockdown at one of the most notorious federal jails in the country, the Metropolitan Detention Center, known as MDC. It's been cited by watchdog groups and elected officials for its violence and substandard conditions. Prison consultant Tara Lenich says Diddy needs to face this harsh new reality.
I think his legal team needs to make him stay focused, and that he needs to concentrate on his actions and his behavior going forward, because his actions and his behavior thus far, what's being alleged, has not worked for him.
Let's bring this to our panel and find out what they have to say. Joining me for this conversation is Asia Grace. She's a lifestyle reporter for the New York Post. Asia, great to have you with us.
It's a pleasure, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Tara Lenich. She's a prison consultant and criminal justice advocate with Liberty Advisors. Tara, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
We appreciate it. Also with us is attorney Philip Hamilton. He's a criminal defense attorney and managing partner of Hamilton Clark, LLP. Phil, thanks so much for being with us.
Lisa, thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Phil, let me start with you on this. In terms of the bail denial, there were a couple of reasons brought up and a couple of things we're hearing. What do you think was the main reason that bail was denied for Diddy for a third time?
I mean, the judge is very clear that there was no set of conditions that the court believed could ultimately keep the public safety at a level that would have permitted Diddy to be released. The primary concern, I believe, Lisa, is simply that because of his reach, because of his resources, because of his wealth, the government had strong concerns about witness tampering. And as there is a continuing grand jury investigation that's going on, there may be subsequent charges that come later. Certainly, they didn't want Diddy to have any easier of an ability to potentially reach out to witnesses, pay witnesses off, try to get people to not go into the grand jury, and in any way compromise the government's case. The judge weighed his right to be able to consult with his attorneys, but also the government's arguments in regards to, can the public actually continue to be safe? Will witnesses be tampered with? And ultimately, the court fell on the side with the government, and he remains in jail as of right now.
Asia, in terms of the social media aspect of this, because that is something that has come up at every hearing that I've been in on, sitting in that courtroom there, they talk about that he's using his children, the kids, the beautiful family that's sitting in the second row there with his mother at every hearing, that they are using their social media accounts basically to try to taint the jury pool. What do you think about that?
I mean, suspicions are actually high from both the prosecution and in the court of public opinion that, Team Diddy might be trying to use his kids to eke out a little sympathy from the powers that be, including the jury. And I mean, listen, this man went from making beats for the likes of Nas and Nicki Minaj to, virtually clinking a tin can across prison bar cells. So it's not far-fetched that Puffy and his people would be pulling out all the stops and using every trick in the book to kind of garner some leniency. That said, think of all the hundreds of thousands of inmates who are currently in jail who've left their children parentless and unsupported. I mean, those moms and dads aren't necessarily getting much sympathy or special treatment, whether they post on social media or not. So with Diddy, especially based on all of the allegations that are being leveled against him, I don't know that the social media activity is really going to garner much grace in courts and online. Let me tell you, the comments are not in his favor.
Tara, if he was your client, what would you be advising him, especially now that he's had bail denied for a third time?
I mean, Diddy's at a risky crossroads right now, right? He's facing not only the criminal case, but hundreds of lawsuits, for piling up, pouring in. So I'd say to him, like, listen, we need to prepare you for each step. You need to be aware of the surroundings that you're in. He's used to being the media mogul and being able to control what's getting out there. And right now he's not. And he needs to be aware that he's under constant surveillance, constant attention. And even an average inmate, they wouldn't be paying attention to necessarily as much as they're paying attention to what he does and his actions.
And then the celebrity factor being there behind bars, that's got to play a role.
Yeah, it definitely plays a role. I mean, he's not in the general population at MDC, which is horrific. All of MDC is horrific, but he is still confined in this terrible environment, living in, basically a 7x12 area. And as a celebrity, he's going to have people that want to be around him, right? Like want to talk to him, but what are their motives? He's got to be aware of, like, are they going to use it to get time off their case? Like, are they going to turn on him? There's different considerations. Yes, he's a celebrity. He's not in the same population, but he's still got to be aware of everything that he's doing and how it's going to be interpreted.
Stay with us. There's more to come. Phil, in terms of what's said at these hearings, like when the prosecutors say, well, he's doing this, does that have to be factual, or can they pretty much say whatever they want to make their case?
I mean, a lot of defendants will generally say that the federal prosecutors are saying whatever they want to make their case, but to the extent that there are standards that lawyers are held to in court as officers of the court, 100%. If you come in there making proven false statements or statements that don't have a good faith basis in truth, then you're putting yourself in positions that ultimately be sanctioned by the court, to potentially be, put before a grievance committee of judges at the jurisdictional level with which you practice to potentially sanction you, suspend your license. So as lawyers, we're held to very high ethical standards with which, when we are in court and we're making representations on the record, you can't go in there lying. So when you're in these bail hearings and you're hearing factual allegations that are being put on the record, whether it's an allegation that, Diddy is, writing notes in the prison cell that he's trying to get out to certain witnesses, or that he's making calls from other people's phones, as a federal prosecutor, you better make sure that there's a strong basis in truth to be able to say those things. Because if in fact it's found out that you were lying or that there was no basis in truth, it could be very problematic for that prosecutor's career and certainly the government's case.
Tara, you yourself went through the federal prison system. What's it like when you realize this is where I have to be for a certain period of time? What's the mindset?
I mean, I think it's really hard. You know, it's hard for everybody. You're facing a loss of time. So for you, time is stopping, right? It's standing still because you're now in this same routine every day over and over. And meanwhile, your family and friends are continuing on and things are happening on the outside, and you don't have the same ability to be a part of that. So in any way, shape, or form. And I think the best thing that you can do is look forward. And I had to do that. You know, I started making a list like of things I wish I knew before I went in and, you know, while I was there. And there's a lot of things like the better prepared that you are, the more you're mentally going to be able to handle what comes your way, because the conditions are not good no matter where you are. I mean, I was only at a camp and they were still deplorable.
Asia, in terms of the online reaction and just in terms of the public and especially within our hip hop community, do you see any way where they're actually maybe people as they see him, you know, week after week and he's still at MDC and he's still fighting, of any kind of sympathy changing?
Unfortunately for Diddy, no, I don't. In my opinion, based on the things that I've seen on social media, some of the comments under his social media posts, you know, even for people to say like you leaving your comment section open, you're like, you know, you on Instagram, you can private that or you can make it so that only your friends or your followers can comment. But this is open to the whole wide world, and people are flooding in with very harsh and nasty critiques of Diddy and the things he's been accused of. I will say though, with a lot of the newer allegations that are popping up, and they're popping up like petunias every other day, there's another lawsuit, another alleged victim. A lot of people, though they're very sympathetic towards some of the claims that are being made, they're also side-eyeing them, saying, well, like, did he do all of this? Are you guys legitimate victims? Or is everybody just out here trying to get a cut of that Cassie cake, that big settlement that we all assume was in the high millions? I guess if there was any sympathy to be had, it's just people are wondering if these hundreds of thousands of people that are now coming up and saying, oh, Diddy did this to me, Diddy that to me, if they're, you know, because there's, I guess, a cloud of doubt over some of these claims, you can maybe say there's a little sympathy there, but it's a stretch.
So what about all of these civil cases? Because there has been, like Asia said, there's been a barrage of these cases. What role, or if any, do they play on impacting the sex trafficking case?
So for every subsequent lawsuit that is filed, you can imagine the government is going to be going through each individual pleading, each individual lawsuit. If they're seeing some actual allegations that play into some part of the theory of their case, or that corroborate some other allegation that someone in the grand jury has made, it's just allowing them to potentially strengthen their case. And as a criminal defense attorney that's representing Diddy, you have to be on top of all of those lawsuits as well. And you need to be prepared to rebut that. So what it does is it really stretches the resources of his defense team, because now not only am I dealing with the terabytes of discovery that I have to go through and prepare for with regards to the government's case, I need to be aware of all of these collateral allegations that are out here in all of these civil lawsuits, because I need to be able to defend in the criminal case potentially against those allegations too. So, I mean, you can just hear it in me. It's exhausting.
Tara, in terms of the preparation for the trial, he's at MDC. He didn't have any access to any of the digital discovery until less than a week after the third bail request was denied, and saying that listen, I'm not able to review everything I need in order to give my lawyers advice. How real a claim is that in that particular facility?
Oh, in MDC, it's definitely a real claim. You know, that's one of the biggest gripes for both defendants and attorneys. It's, you know, we need access to our clients and they need access to the discovery so that we can best prepare the defense for them. It's not just, you know, the defendant doing it. It's the attorneys, that they need their client to be able to speak freely with them, to have meetings with them. And if those things aren't happening, which by all accounts, they're not happening at MDC generally, then that's hurting everybody's cases. You know, all defendants.
Sarah, let me just jump in real quick, because the problem with MDC is all the problems that you report on the inside. That's what leads to lockdowns. Clients can't come down to the computers to be able to review their discovery. They may not have access to me as an attorney or correspondence that I'm sending to them while they're on lockdown. And like basically you're trying to go through terabytes of discovery when logistically the defendants that are sitting in MDC don't really have the ability to go through their case by themselves, let alone to then be able to advise you as an attorney. And so much motion practice ends up happening where you're writing to these judges, trying to get orders to allow, your client to come out in the midst of a, 7-day lockdown that everybody else is confined to their cells in MDC. You're trying to get them to be able to prepare for trial. And, Tara, as you will know, as Diddy gets closer to trial, he doesn't even have all of the discovery now.
Asia, in terms of the celebrity factor, has there ever been anything as big as this, a trial, a case like this?
I'm going to say that if you look at the Cosby case, there are a lot of parallels in just the level of celebrity and the legacy that Bill Cosby had and how it was quickly dismantled with everyone coming out and speaking. It was right at the peak of the Me Too movement, and we had famous women speaking out against Cosby. So if we had to kind of look at our recent history and say, well, what else did we experience that's similar to this Diddy case? It's that. And I'm sure that even with him being in MDC where R. Kelly was, it's just the R. Kelly files and the trial and all that went on with him also kind of rings, as eerily similar to this Diddy case. This thing has the potential to really explode and become much bigger than any other case we've seen thus far.
Bill, we say, and people refer to the times that Diddy has won other things or bounced back from other scandals. He just changes his nickname and then keeps going on and starts like a whole new phase. But the feds are a whole different ballgame, as you told us many times here on Street Soldiers. What do you mean by that?
Whole different ballgame. You think about that case that he beat, the gun case from the club shooting when he was with J-Lo, okay? When he was at Club New York or what have you. Totally different scenario to go in and try to defend against what essentially was like a 3 to 5 second altercation that led to a shooting, as compared to defending against a federal racketeering conspiracy case that's investigated by the FBI, which, no disrespect to the NYPD, they're not the FBI. The FBI is one of the most world-renowned investigative agencies like I personally have ever seen. Their reputation, it precedes them in every respect. This is an investigation that's going over the course of years. That, to your point, Lisa, when these U.S. attorneys, when these assistant U.S. attorneys, when these FBI agents are like combing through this evidence, they're not bringing anything in court that they're not certain to probably the level of 90 to 95% they can get a conviction. Whereas with the state, somebody got shot. Somebody has to get arrested and prosecuted. So whether the case is a 40-60 chance or a 30-70 chance at a conviction, the state prosecutors are going to, on that kind of case, move forward. With the federal government on these kinds of cases, they're only moving forward once they've assessed the matter, once their FBI agents have spoken to hundreds of witnesses, and they're 90 to 95% sure that they can get the conviction. You're coming in and defending against a different beast.
And some people are surprised, Tara, that he didn't have some sort of public relations or crisis management on this. Are you surprised by that?
I'm shocked. Like, I would think one of your first things, attorney, crisis management, right? Or attorney, PR firm. You got to get and it's so critical to have the right message out there, because exactly what Asia's been saying, it's like how, if you let some of his kids like freewheel, it could backfire, like this would require professionals to look at the different angles of how things are going to be interpreted.
The other thing I was surprised about, and the judge brought this up at the last hearing in the courtroom, they were trying to use that as an excuse to get bail, to be granted bail, saying Mr. Combs needs to defend himself against these allegations in the court of public opinion. And the judge said, why don't you have a public relations expert on your team that is handling that? And he said, well, we're trying to handle that, but I can tell you as a reporter, it's like you email, all you can do is email the lawyers and say, we're doing this story at such and such a time, and this is what's happening, and this is what people are saying. Would you like to make any kind of comment? And they can't get back to everybody and still prepare the case and handle all of these motions. I was shocked that there was no PR or crisis firm. Asia, did that surprise you? Because you get pitched by them all the time, I'm sure.
All the time. But no, I am surprised because you would think that somebody of Diddy's status and somebody who is facing these serious allegations, and not just him, but now his children are under, the microscope, and his parenting and his, you name it, his whole legacy is being looked at differently now. So you would think you would need at least 10 people at minimum to be out there doing any and everything that they can to salvage his name, if that's at all possible. And to not have that, it does leave the public to make up their own minds and their own decisions, their own opinions, and there's nothing really countering them. So we're just kind of watching and waiting. But unfortunately, a lot of people online especially have decided what they believe is true.
Tara, final word, do you think he can get a fair trial?
I mean, his attorneys have a tough road, right now to try and find fair and impartial jurors, and because of his notoriety, he's staying in the news in not a good way, so each day it gets harder for his defense team.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the Diddy case and his chances for a fair trial. You can watch the show again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and the Fox Local app, where you can also find many of our shows. Remember, use your mind, it's your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.